Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Alan. Good morning. Welcome to the programme. If your alarm's just got off at 8 o'clock this morning, then, well, it's Steve with your Dorset Breakfast Show. We got lots to discuss between now and when we sign off at 9 o'clock. And we start by returning to a project that we spoke about 3 years ago. I was delighted to catch up with Jess Bone then from Bournemouth University because, it was the midst of that first pandemic summer, and being able to talk about anything that wasn't pandemic related was frankly thrilling, let alone the fact that Jess was working on this really interesting scheme. They were installing 100 artificial rock pools around the coast, including here in Dorset, and monitoring the species that inhabit them. Well, 3 years on, the project is now set to close. We can catch up again with Jess to find out what has been learnt. Jess, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. I remember that conversation back in August 2020 very fondly. I think at that point we were maybe 12 weeks into the project, and already you had like 45 species or something calling these places home. So I mean, let's go back to the start. So what was the thinking behind this?
Yeah, so basically on our coastlines, with more people moving to the coast kind of on a global scale, but also we're looking at sea level rise as well. We've got lots of coastal structures, so either for sea defence or port infrastructure, but we're going to be having more and more of that over the years to come. And so it's about incorporating habitat into those structures because they will be replacing natural habitat as that they're built. So it's about adding that habitat back into those structures and allowing nature to move back into urban spaces.
Okay, so for us, for instance, on the Dorset coastline, you had groins, you had sea walls, and somehow you kind of made artificial habitats part of those.
Yes, that's it. So in our Poole Harbour site, which is our Dorset site, we've got a vertical sea wall, and the company that makes them, Articology, have championed these artificial rock pools that are bolted onto those sea walls. And they're basically like concrete sink basins that sit on the sea wall, and they hold water at low tide, and they've got lots of pockets and cracks and crevices in, nooks and crannies for sea creatures to hide in when the tide goes out.
I got my figures wrong a moment ago. We spoke to you, I think, 4 weeks after they were installed 3 years ago, and you had 10 species already living in those rock pools. What can you say 3 years on?
So now we have over 60 species living in and on the rock pools, cool. And that includes fish and crabs and lots of interesting things. So yeah, they've done really, really well. And
they have just come there organically? You not snuck out in the middle of the night and dropped the odd hermit crab in there or anything?
No, nothing like that, no. Well, the thing is, every time the tide comes in, it can bring different species in there. So we might find different crabs and different fish species every single time we go down there because that's just how the tide works. But we've got lots of lovely, interesting things like squishy species, so like sea squirts and sponges that you otherwise wouldn't find on a sea wall because it dries out too quickly. We've got native oysters, which is a real win because that's a priority species. And yeah, lots of interesting things every time we go down. It's an absolute delight.
Okay. I mean, this sounds like it is all good as far as these species go and I guess natural biodiversity and whatever. But are there any disadvantages to using this kind of attitude if we are going to be restoring, rebuilding or in fact, installing new sea defences?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously this was a research project. So we were trialling this type of eco-engineering, it's called, intervention, to see how we can bring biodiversity up onto coastal structures. The idea is in the future with new builds that we have that all those nooks and crannies and areas of water pockets to be designed into the initial structure before it's even built. There are potential costs incurred with that, with more concrete to be used potentially, and so there are questions and challenges remain, but we are putting our heads together with the coastal engineers and practitioners to figure these things out and how we can do it effectively and cost efficiently as well.
And every time you say the word concrete, I kind of bridle a little, but worth explaining that this is actually eco-friendly concrete as far as that goes.
Yes, so the concrete used for the artificial rock pools is a low carbon concrete that Articology use specifically for that reason. And yeah, it is challenging because obviously concrete is really good at what it does, which is lasting ages, which is what you need for a cedar fence. There isn't another material like it, but yes, obviously with concrete, there is a high carbon cost to that. But yeah, if we can bring nature back into that, that's a little win for us.
Just finally, Jess, I mean, yeah, like I say, we spoke to you 3 years ago when you were starting out on this. Would you have considered this kind of biodiversity, this number of species, a win back then? Was this about what you were thinking? Much better, much worse?
We had no idea, really. I think the biggest surprise for us was having the native oysters come in. We weren't expecting that. Native oysters are actually quite rare on our coast now. We've lost them by about 80%. So to have them make their home in our artificial rock pools was just absolutely wonderful. Yeah, that was the big surprise for us.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll see what happens next with this kind of approach. But it's been nice talking to you over the years. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Jess Bone there, PhD student at Bournemouth University, talking about that scheme to install artificial rock pools, over 100 around coastal ecosystems. And I think, is it 60 in Poole Harbour? They had 3 sites in Poole Harbour. It's BBC Radio Solent. It's May.